Saturday morning smelled like cedar shavings, gasoline, and the faint sweetness of honeysuckle. The sun was just cresting the neighbor's pine line, slanting across the backyard in stripes. I was halfway through fixing the old fence post, the one that leaned like a drunk uncle at weddings, when the notification buzzed against my thigh. I glanced at my phone, thumb still sticky with wood stain. It was Rachel's Instagram. I hadn't followed her in months. My quiet protest after she told me social media was her space, and I was too old to get it. But my buddy Dave followed her. He'd sent me the post, with the message, "Dude, WTF?" The picture looked innocent to anyone who didn't know. Rooftop bar. Sunset. Craft cocktails sweating into crystal. Her in that tight green blazer she always said was too professional for our neighborhood. Brad, her work husband, beside her. His hand not quite on her waist, but close. Too close. Her caption underneath. Men think they own you. We're not property. A cascade of laughing emojis followed. Coworkers chimed in with Yas Queen clapping hands, and preach fire fired. Someone had even tagged Brad. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over it like it was a live wire. For a second, I felt the strangest urge to laugh. Not from humor, but from the kind of mental dislocation you get when you realize you're not in the story you thought you were living. Like finding out the game you were playing was rigged, and the rules you'd memorized were for something else entirely. I didn't comment. I didn't call. I didn't smash the phone or scream or sink to my knees like some poorly written movie. I just set the drill down on the grass. Walked inside. The smell of lemon wood polish greeted me. The house was clean, spotless, really, because I'd spent the past 2 days keeping it that way. Not for her. For me. I didn't like the idea of my life becoming a mess, even as it clearly was. I went to the office. Bottom drawer. Back corner. Locked metal case. Combination still the same. The day we signed the original consultancy papers, June 12, 2004. Inside was the folder. Black, thin, paper slightly yellowed at the edges. The only piece of that era I had deliberately kept. She'd forgotten it existed. Hell, maybe she never really knew what she signed. She was too busy charming investors while I and her father read the damn fine print. I packed a small bag. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, my laptop, and the folder. Then I walked into the kitchen. Took one last look at the ceramic fruit bowl she loved, but never used. The wedding photo above the breakfast nook. She hated how her arms looked in that dress, but posted it anyway. And the 3 wine glasses drying on the rack. She hadn't even hidden that detail. 3. She hadn't traveled alone, and she hadn't told me. I opened the garage. Climbed into the truck. Didn't peel out. Didn't blast music. Just drove. The neighborhood passed slowly. Mr. Harwell was watering his begonias again, waving with that same suspicious smile he'd worn since the HOA meeting in 2020. I waved back. The silence in the cab felt cavernous, like the quiet after a detonation. When dust still hangs in the air and no one knows what's standing and what's ash. I wasn't even angry. Anger would have been comforting. Anger would have meant I still wanted something from her. But I didn't. Not anymore. She'd given me what I needed. That post wasn't just smug, it was public. It was performative. It was a shot across the bow that she assumed would bounce off. But she didn't know the war she'd just started had already ended. The address I drove to was in an industrial park, tucked behind a decommissioned print warehouse. Faded sign. McCullough and Drake, Strategic Finance. Only one half of that partnership still existed. He greeted me in the back office with a nod. "Didn't expect you this soon," he said. I held up the folder. "Still got the copy?" "Yup," he replied. "Been waiting for you to come back for it." We sat. He poured bourbon even though it was barely 11 a.m. He slid his own copy across the table. Clause 17 stared at me like an old, forgotten friend. I didn't need to read it. I knew what it said. If the public image of any partner, direct or silent, caused reputational harm to the firm, the controlling equity would default to the remaining partners. Triggered by scandal, confirmed by board review. She'd signed it. So had her father. She had no idea. By the time I left, the wheels were already turning. I hadn't filed the notice yet, but it was drafted. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a scene. I do what men like me do when we've been humiliated in public. Wait, and make damn sure the collapse is louder than the insult. She called around 8:45 that night. Not because she missed me. Not because she cared. I knew that tone the moment I picked up. Voice a little too cheerful, a little too rehearsed, the kind of syrupy sweetness she used when she was about to lie through her teeth. "Mark," she said with a laugh tucked behind her words. Don't tell me you're actually mad about that post. I didn't answer right away. I was sitting in a borrowed cabin 2 counties over, feet up on a creaky porch rail, glass of rye in hand. The signal crackled, which felt appropriate. Even her voice sounded like it was fraying at the edges of reality. It was just a joke, she continued, tone rising like I was a child she was scolding gently. You seriously can't think I meant anything by it. Brad and I were just blowing off steam. You're being kind of dramatic. I took a slow sip. Let her hang in the static. Don't be so controlling, she added, a little firmer now. It's honestly exhausting. You get all broody over nothing. No one owns anyone, Mark. I'm allowed to have friends. You're acting like I cheated or something. That word, cheated, the one she loved to dangle but never say with her whole chest. She always danced just close enough to the line that she could feign innocence while daring me to react. Brad had always been harmless. Their flirty work texts were professional banter. Their weekend conferences, career-building opportunities. She gaslit with the finesse of a seasoned illusionist. Smoke, mirrors, and a victim complex polished to a high shine. I set my glass down and finally said, You're right. She paused. I'm done controlling anything. Another beat of silence. I could almost hear her blinking. What does that mean? It means, I said evenly, you're free. Completely. Congratulations. She scoffed. So what, you're sulking now? Silent treatment? Come on, Mark, grow up. I didn't say anything else. Just ended the call. Because what do you say to someone who thinks they're still playing checkers when the chessboard's already in flames? What she didn't know, what she wouldn't even begin to suspect, was that I'd already met with Carl Drake, a man she hadn't thought about in over a decade. Her father's old business partner, the boring numbers guy, the one who faded into the background once the rebranding happened and Rachel started fancying herself the face of the firm. She thought Carl had retired. She thought the paperwork from the old days had been shredded or buried under newer, sleeker contracts. She thought wrong. Carl had been waiting for this moment longer than I had. She and her father had eased him out quietly back in 2010, after they streamlined the consultancy firm into something more vision-aligned. But Carl had kept everything. Because unlike Rachel, Carl never underestimated people. He knew narcissists had a half-life. And he'd told me, over black coffee in his dusty office surrounded by ledgers and faded photos of better years. Son, I knew she'd do something stupid someday. I didn't think it'd take this long. He slid his copy of the 2004 founding contract toward me. It still smelled faintly like printer toner and stale cigars. He had a backup in his safe and another with his lawyer. I didn't need all that. Just the one clause. Just the signature. Rachel's name. Her father's. Mine. Carl's. I took a photo of it with my phone. Then another with the timestamp overlay. Then one more, just in case. Carl said, she thought we'd forget. That the old world didn't exist anymore. But I'm still here. And so are the rules. It wasn't revenge. Not really. It was accounting. Long-delayed accountability. Rachel, meanwhile, spent that evening oblivious, wine glass in one hand, uploading another photo of her and Brad at some networking event. She'd added a filter that made her eyes look bigger, skin flawless. The caption read, Independent women lift each other up, flexed biceps, briefcase sparkles. I almost admired the irony. She was about to get lifted, all right, right out of everything she'd ever called hers. She didn't try to call again that night. Probably assumed her little speech had worked, that I was stewing in my own outdated insecurities. Probably thought she'd toss me a breadcrumb in a day or two, tell me she missed me, that I was being immature, that I needed to support her growth. She didn't know that in less than 72 hours, that growth would turn septic. She had forgotten what foundation her little empire was built on. Forgotten the handshake agreements and backroom deals that made her LinkedIn profile possible. Forgotten the man behind the man, me. But I remembered. And so did Carl. And while she posted selfies with captions about being unbothered, we were already preparing the notice. She hadn't crossed a line. She had detonated the bridge and lit a cigarette off the flames. The silence was immediate, deliberate, surgical. I didn't just ignore her. I erased the channel, blocked her number, deleted our message thread, disabled email notifications. The symbolic kind of clean break that feels like snapping a pencil in half. Pointless, childish, and deeply satisfying. Then I logged into the company intranet, tapped out a short message to HR. Working remotely for the next 2 weeks. Fully reachable. No issues. 2 lines. No explanation. No room for follow-up. They replied within 10 minutes. Of course. HR is like that, perky and concerned in the same breath. Is everything okay? Sure, everything was fine. I was simply clearing the runway for what was about to take off. After that, I went to the shared folder Carl and I had set up years ago, the one that held dusty contracts, annual amendments, partner distributions, and the occasional handwritten addendum scrawled in ink on legal pad paper. Clause 17 wasn't just legal jargon. It had teeth. And the minute Rachel's post went live, the wheels were in motion. Not because of public embarrassment, not because of hurt feelings, because she compromised the firm's ethical representation, a phrase lifted directly from the code of conduct that she had championed at the last annual meeting. Carl had already prepped the notice to the board. He just needed one final trigger. Her. She gave it to us. But Rachel, of course, remained blissfully unaware. That weekend, her Instagram became a highlight reel of oblivious arrogance. Boomerangs of champagne glasses clinking. A slow-motion video of her and Brad walking through the hotel lobby with exaggerated confidence. Captioned, "Power strides with my favorite co-pilot briefcase, airplane hashtag independent woman, hashtag female leaders, hashtag own your life." In one photo, she wore a tight dress I'd never seen before, dark red, almost burgundy, with Brad standing behind her, half smiling like a man who thought he'd won something. She looked straight into the camera, eyes smug, chin high, like a woman who believed she was untouchable. And maybe she was, until 11:43 p.m. that night. That's when the first crack appeared. Her phone pinged with an email. Subject line, urgent, conduct review. Sender, regional office compliance. It was cold, efficient, no emojis, no passive-aggressive pleasantries. We've been alerted to possible conduct violations involving inter-office boundaries and public representation. Please be available for a compliance review call on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. She screenshotted it and sent it to her group chat, where I imagine the replies were some mix of OMG, probably nothing, and someone's always snitching. She didn't text me. Couldn't. She didn't know this was my doing. Not yet. Her first instinct would be that someone from the training seminar had reported her. Some uptight junior analyst who didn't appreciate Rachel and Brad's playful dynamic. I knew her brain would rationalize it before it blamed. Still, I imagined the moment she read it. Laying in a hotel bed in some overpriced boutique suite, phone glowing in the dark. Brad snoring lightly beside her, shirtless and stupid. I pictured her frowning, scrolling back through her feed, trying to guess what had triggered it. Maybe the post with the "Own You" caption? Or the story where Brad called her boss lady, and she replied with a winking gif. Or the hashtag thread where she listed her core rules for empowered partnerships, tagging half the male executives by name? She'd dismiss it. Of course she would. That first layer of panic hadn't crept in yet. She'd tilt her head, think this is just noise. Someone trying to police me again. She might even feel energized, self-righteous fury wrapped in feminism-light branding. But beneath the confidence, a pinprick of unease. A hairline fracture. Because even she had to admit, compliance never sent emails on weekends. And especially not that late. The regional director was an ex-lawyer. Humorless. Brutal. She'd know this wasn't just an HR slap on the wrist. Still, the silence from me would gnaw more than any email. She tried texting me from Brad's phone the next morning. I recognized the area code immediately. The message was short. "You're acting childish. Let's talk like adults." I blocked it before reading the rest. Then she emailed, "Mark, I don't know what you're doing, but this cold shoulder crap isn't attractive. If you're pissed, say it. Don't just disappear. You're a grown man. No greeting. No apology. Just condescension." I replied with a single line. "Please contact my attorney for any further communication. His information is attached." The response came 10 minutes later. "Wow. So you are making this messy. Cute." She thought it was a tantrum. She didn't realize it was an autopsy. By Sunday afternoon, I had forwarded the screenshots to Carl and drafted the final trigger letter. The phrasing was surgical, referencing breach of Clause 17, loss of fiduciary image, and invoking the silent equity clause. The board would see it Monday morning. Her father, still a named advisor, would get his copy too. Meanwhile, Rachel posted a boomerang of her mimosa clinking glasses with the girls. Captioned, "Monday's coming, but we still slay high-heeled shoe hashtag female leaders hashtag Rizzy and grind." Funny thing about mimosas and boomerangs. They loop, but real life doesn't. The folder was thinner than I remembered. Strange, considering it held the weight of Rachel's entire kingdom. I opened it slowly, not out of sentiment, but precision. This wasn't nostalgia. This was an autopsy. 21 years ago, the document inside had been the birth certificate of the consultancy. Back when the three of us, me, Rachel's father Henry, and Carl, sat around an oak table in a rented office space, arguing about how to split control and shield risk. Back when Rachel was still an ambitious junior associate with sharp heels and sharper instincts, not the self-crowned thought leader she paraded as now. She hadn't been a partner then. But when Henry insisted she be groomed for succession, I agreed, on one condition: the structure would remain. A three-part equity shell. One face, Rachel, one board voice, Henry, and one silent partner, me. My LLC would hold the tiebreak vote. No public title. No photo on the website. Just a name in fine print on line 87 of the original articles. Over time, Rachel dismissed it as a relic. Called it dead paper. Said the rebranding in 2013 rendered it obsolete. What she didn't realize was that while she posed for Forbes and LinkedIn fluff pieces, I was still getting quarterly statements. Still signing off on major fiscal shifts. Still holding onto the clause Henry had insisted on back in '04 after some public scandal involving one of his frat brothers. Clause 17. In the event of public scandal, misconduct, or actions which bring disrepute upon the firm's leadership or partners, any silent partner may initiate a protective takeover, with majority stake transferred to remaining parties not named in the scandal. At the time, it had been a hypothetical. Henry was paranoid, and Carl wanted flexibility. I added it to the doc just to shut them up. Rachel, back then, didn't even notice. She was too busy obsessing over her business cards and plotting how to shift our consulting tone from operational to visionary. But now Clause 17 was loaded. And thanks to her rooftop post, it was actionable. I spent an hour verifying the original doc against Carl's scanned copy. Every signature was intact. Dates matched. The notarization was clean. Even the ink still smelled faintly metallic. I smiled. The irony was brutal. She'd always accused me of being too cautious, of hoarding paper while the world moved to cloud-based trust. But this clause was analog vengeance. A physical knife, rusted but still razor-sharp. Her father had signed it without hesitation. Back then, he still believed in legacy. He used words like stewardship and corporate morality with a straight face. I imagine if he read it now, he wouldn't even remember signing it. But the board would. And the lawyers would. And more importantly, the HR team at her firm would, once Carl and I pushed the button. That button wasn't dramatic. It was a formal submission of concern. We weren't exposing her. We weren't even accusing her of cheating. We were raising an internal ethics flag based on her public representation and professional boundaries. The same policy language she herself had updated 2 years ago when she led the Modern Conduct Task Force. It was Rachel's own rules that would destroy her. I drafted the formal letter with Carl, language crisp and antiseptic. No flair, no emotion, just legal scalpel work. To whom it may concern, we respectfully invoke Clause 17 of the 2004 Founding Agreement, citing breach of ethical standards as established in the 2019 Conduct Charter. As silent partner with vested equity and advisory oversight, I request an immediate freeze on discretionary benefits, pending review by the board and internal counsel. Attached, documentation of public conduct, firm representation, and precedent clauses signed by Henry Whitmore and Rachel Whitmore Grant. Respectfully, Mark S. Taylor, Managing Partner, LL 8427 Holdings. Carl read it once. Then again. Cold, he said finally. Professional. She'll never see it coming. That's the point. He opened the whiskey drawer, poured 2 fingers into a chipped glass. It's poetic. You built the guardrails she drove herself into. I didn't toast. I wasn't in the mood. She thought silence meant surrender. But silence is a strategy when you know exactly where the wire is buried. She thought she'd buried the past with a new logo and a slicker website. She forgot that power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it watches. And sometimes it comes wrapped in a dusty folder, hidden in a drawer behind receipts and old photos, quietly patient, lethally specific. The paperwork wasn't revenge. It was compliance. And I was about to comply, with the clause she never read. Monday morning opened with espresso and inconvenience. Rachel tapped her AirPods in, balancing her laptop on a tray table while room service dropped off a $30 fruit plate she wouldn't eat. She had a half hour until her presentation at the conference, keynote on redefining leadership in a hybrid world. But the email subject line blinking on her screen caught her attention. Urgent. Compliance review. Video meeting required. Below it, a Zoom link. 10 a.m. sharp. Mandatory attendance. Legal and HR. She rolled her eyes. Probably about Candace, she muttered, spearing a strawberry. Candace had been acting tense all weekend. She was one of the younger analysts, early 20s, still believed in mentorship and boundaries. Brad had mentored her a little too hard during the first dinner, and Rachel had smoothed it over with a smile and a free drink. Candace had looked like she was going to cry, probably filed a complaint. Rachel was already composing her inner monologue. Some people just don't know how to handle empowered teams. Old-fashioned thinking. That was her go-to. Label anything uncomfortable as regressive. It worked 9 times out of 10. She was, after all, the face of progressive leadership in their firm. She logged in at 9:59, smile preloaded. 2 faces appeared. Claire, VP of Legal, and Arthur from HR. Both looked like they'd already been talking. Rachel, Claire said. Not a greeting. No smile. Arthur gave a tight nod. Claire continued. We've been asked to review several incidents stemming from your recent offsite. Rachel kept her tone light. Is this about the hashtags? Arthur blinked. Partly. But there's also been a formal conduct complaint submitted internally. Rachel raised an eyebrow. By whom? We're not permitted to disclose that at this stage, Claire replied. But the complaint includes a reference to inappropriate workplace relationships, as well as statements made publicly on social platforms that reference ownership dynamics and gender politics. Rachel almost laughed. Oh, come on. The post? That was obviously satire. People take themselves so seriously. Claire didn't blink. Ms. Whitmore Grant, the issue isn't satire. It's perception. When you tag the firm and associate it with charged language, especially while traveling on the firm's dime, you create exposure. Brand vulnerability. You're an executive. You don't have the luxury of irony. Rachel leaned back, tossing a grape into her mouth. Let's not overstate this. I tagged a bar. Used hashtags. Everyone does it. Arthur tapped his pen. It's not just the hashtags. It's the volume. The suggestive photos. And the fact that one of the people featured was later let go mid-trip. That snagged her. Brad? He resigned. He wanted to spend more time with his startup. Neither HR nor legal reacted. Claire folded her hands. Your public representation, your visible proximity to another senior colleague in non-professional settings, and your language, men think they own you, has been flagged. Rachel crossed her arms. Flagged by who? I've worked here longer than both of you combined. This is political. It's procedural, Claire said calmly. Rachel smirked. Right. And I suppose someone just happened to trip over a LinkedIn post and spiral? Claire didn't blink. No. The concern came from a silent equity partner. That froze her. Eh what? Arthur clarified. One of the LLC equity holders connected to your original firm. Rachel laughed, too loud. That thing? You've got to be joking. That company structure was from 2004. It's been dissolved. Claire leaned forward. Actually, the structure was preserved under rebranding, and the clause in question was renewed in 2019 during the merger review process. Arthur added, Clause 17. Rachel blinked. Something cold settled in the base of her spine. I'm sorry, she said carefully. Are you saying this is coming from someone internal? Silent partner, Claire repeated. Which grants oversight. They filed a request for ethics review citing reputational risk under Clause 17. Rachel's voice flattened. That clause hasn't been used in nearly 20 years. Claire gave a tight smile. Until now. Rachel swallowed hard. But reflex kicked in. Deflection. Control. This is absurd. You know I've built this firm's entire cultural wing. I rewrote the damn conduct manual. And now someone's upset because I took a picture with a colleague. Arthur cleared his throat. It's not one picture. It's a consistent pattern. Public-facing conduct that's blurred personal and professional boundaries, coupled with a formal internal complaint. And per policy, we're now obligated to begin a preliminary review. Rachel nodded slowly, fighting the tremble in her jaw. This feels personal. Claire's voice softened, almost patronizing. It's procedural. We'll notify you regarding next steps, Arthur added. In the meantime, we recommend pausing all social activity referencing the firm. They ended the call without waiting for questions. Rachel stared at the blank screen for a long time, then opened her texts. Typed, Hey, did you do something? She paused. Deleted it. No one to send it to. Her messages to Mark were bouncing. Brad wasn't answering. Her father was off the grid, at a retreat with no cell reception until Thursday. She looked at her Instagram. Her last post. They fear women who speak boldly. Good. Let them. It had 317 likes. And one private comment she hadn't noticed before. Clause 17. Reread your legacy. It was just past noon when her phone rang again, an unfamiliar number with a Virginia area code. Rachel almost didn't answer. She was still pacing her hotel room in bare feet, her breakfast untouched, the tray of eggs congealing under the silver dome. The morning's legal call had left a faint pressure at her temples, like a hangover made of paperwork. But something in her gut made her swipe the screen. Hello. Rachel. Her father's voice cracked through the speaker like it had been dropped from a great height. No greeting. No pleasantries. Dad, I just got a notice from the board. His breathing was jagged, like he'd sprinted somewhere and only stopped halfway. What the hell did you do? What are you talking about? A notice, he snapped. A formal board communication. Internal review. Clause 17. Mark just filed it. Mark. Your husband. Rachel sat down hard on the edge of the bed. What clause? There was a silence on the other end. Not the kind that's empty. This one was loaded, like a pause before a detonation. Clause 17, he said again, quieter this time. The one I co-signed in 2004. The one Carl drafted. The one you never bothered to read. Her mouth dried instantly. Dad, that agreement was voided when we restructured. No, he said quickly. It was folded in. You insisted on keeping the silent equity model because it gave you brand control without needing Carl's vote. But that meant the clause came with it. You were too busy focusing on rebranding optics to bother with the damn governance section. Rachel stood up, pacing again, one hand in her hair. You mean to tell me he can just take the firm? No, her father replied, exhaling. He's not taking it. He's initiating a protective review. He's claiming reputational damage, citing your conduct as grounds to freeze ownership shares and trigger a realignment. She could barely process the words. That's ridiculous. It's a photo. Some hashtags. It's Brad. You don't get it, he hissed. You're not a junior analyst. You're the public face of an 8-figure consultancy. And you posted a man's hand on your lower back with a caption that makes it look like you're sleeping with your business partner while representing our firm. That's not branding. That's a goddamn PR nightmare. I wasn't sleeping with Brad, she shouted. No one cares, he roared back. It's not about truth, it's about optics. It's about contracts. And right now, the board's about to read a 21-year-old agreement that you ignored and I signed, and Mark has weaponized with the precision of a sniper. Rachel felt her pulse in her throat. She opened her laptop, hands trembling, and pulled up the old shared folder, the one she hadn't looked at in years. There it was. 2004 operating agreement.pdf. She clicked. The file lagged for half a second, like it didn't want to open. And then, page after page of scanned legalese. Section 17, her father said quietly. Third paragraph. Read it. She scrolled. And there it was. In the event that a named partner or representative causes public or reputational harm to the firm or its subsidiaries, the silent equity holder may, upon board review and co-signatory acknowledgement, assume controlling interest to preserve corporate integrity. Executive privileges, voting rights, and profit distributions may be suspended pending arbitration. She stared at it like it was written in blood. You're kidding me, she whispered. I begged you to review that file in 2019 when we folded it into the new LLC, her father said. You said you were too busy, and that Carl and I loved our dinosaur documents. You said the brand was bulletproof. Rachel felt her knees weaken. She sank to the floor slowly, back against the nightstand. I didn't think he remembered, she muttered. Her father laughed bitterly. He's Mark. Of course he remembered. That man once corrected a decimal on a restaurant receipt 3 days after the dinner. He's been playing the long game since the day you posted your first thought leadership video. You made this personal. She shook her head. No. This is a scare tactic. He's bluffing. You don't bluff with Clause 17, her father snapped. You either use it or you don't. And he did. The board has it. Legal has it. Carl probably has the original ink copy notarized and framed in his dusty office like a damn museum piece. You think this is some emotional tantrum? Rachel, this is a legal warhead, and it's already airborne. Her breath was shallow now. Can't we block it? No, not if the ethics board sees grounds. And you gave them grounds. You built the playbook they're using. You revised the firm's code of conduct yourself. Her mind spun. So what happens now? Her father didn't answer immediately. She could hear paper shuffling. Somewhere in the background, a door slammed. "You're going to get a letter," he said. "Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. It'll say your ownership is under review, that your executive privileges are paused. You won't be able to access internal strategy docs. You won't be on voting calls. And then it'll get worse." She couldn't speak. "I warned you," he added, voice softer now, almost exhausted. "Not about Mark. About you. About your ego. About building an empire on personality instead of policy." Rachel whispered, "What do I do?" "Pray Carl's still bitter enough to drag his feet. Beg the board. And stop posting like a goddamn influencer. Every hour you wait, Mark's 3 moves ahead." The line went dead. Rachel sat there on the floor, phone on her lap, laptop screen still lit up with the words that could end her career. Clause 17. The clause she never read. The one he never forgot. Rachel moved fast, too fast, like a person trying to sprint across a frozen lake after hearing the first crack. By 2 p.m., she was no longer in her hotel room, but in the lobby cafe downstairs, laptop open, blazer thrown over one shoulder, sunglasses on though the room was dim. The sound of spoons clinking and low jazz only made her more agitated. She fired off 3 emails in under 5 minutes. One to legal requesting clarification on the scope of Clause 17, one to HR requesting a temporary exemption to severance restrictions, and one, personal, direct, to Mark. That last one took her the longest. It read more like a PR statement than a plea. "Mark, let's not drag this out. You've made your point. We can discuss an equitable separation privately. There's no need to escalate this through the firm. I'm still willing to negotiate respectfully. Call me." "Rachel." She stared at it for a few seconds before hitting send. His reply didn't come from him. It came from a corporate law firm in D.C., 5 minutes later, stamped with a watermark in the background and signed in digital ink. "Ms. Whitmore Grant. All further communication should be directed to our office. Mr. Taylor will not respond to direct outreach. Charles D. Greer, Managing Partner, Greer and Feldman LLP." She blinked. Once. Twice. Then opened a new email to HR, typed fast, the way you do when you're trying to outrun consequences. "This is a formal request for my severance terms as outlined in the Standard Partner Exit Agreement. Please process and confirm date of issuance. Rachel Whitmore Grant." It took them 12 minutes to reply. 12 minutes where she refreshed her inbox every 30 seconds, as if she could force a better answer through sheer impatience. Then, "Ms. Whitmore Grant, as per current status, your ownership, executive privileges, and associated benefits have been suspended pending internal review. Severance packages are likewise paused. This status is in accordance with Section 9 of the Executive Conduct Agreement you co-authored in 2020. We will notify you upon resolution. HR Admin." She stared at the screen so long she didn't notice the server come by and clear her untouched latte. Her mouth was dry again, not from panic this time, but something deeper, like her bones were hollowing out. She reached for her phone, scrolled through her contacts. Brad. She hesitated, then tapped his name. It rang twice. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. Third time, it didn't even ring. Blocked. She pulled up his Instagram. His profile was gone. Not private, gone. She opened the firm directory app, typed in his name. No matches found. She sat still, then checked the Slack workspace. Searched Brad. His name was now grayed out, marked with the familiar, deactivated, tag. All his messages still existed, floating like digital ghosts, but his profile was a corpse. She texted him. "Where are you?" No response. She tried Candace, the junior analyst. "Have you heard anything about Brad?" No reply. She tried the hotel front desk, asking if he'd checked out. The man on the phone was polite but firm. "We cannot disclose guest information." It was a long shot, but she called Brad's personal number again. It rang once, then voicemail. Her fingers shook. She typed one more desperate message, this time to her assistant at HQ. "Can you check the org chart and tell me if Brad's status changed?" She watched the typing dots bubble up, then stop. No reply. For the first time in years, Rachel realized she was alone. Not alone like, "I need to take a breath and have some wine alone." Alone like cut off. The firm had gone silent. Mark had lawyered up. Brad had been scrubbed like a security risk. Her father wasn't answering. Candace had ghosted her. Even her assistant, who once texted her reminders about skincare routines, had gone dark. She was radioactive now. She minimized the HR email, opened Slack, and typed a message to the leadership channel. the private chat she'd created last year for informal, high-level updates between senior partners. As she typed, the app popped a system notification. You have been removed from this channel. A moment later, the leadership channel disappeared altogether. Her hands fell into her lap. This wasn't just damage control anymore. This was an erasure. A slow, strategic erasure. And she had no one to call but ghosts. Rachel landed 2 days ahead of schedule, booking the red eye after her third ignored call to her father and fifth email bounce from legal. The early flight meant a late arrival. Barely 6 a.m. when her rideshare pulled up to the quiet cul-de-sac she used to call home. The street was still and soft with morning fog, the kind that muffled sound and made everything feel slightly unreal. She didn't bother waking the driver, just slid out of the back seat, wheeling her luggage behind her. Her designer heels clicked over the cobblestones of the driveway, a rhythm that usually made her feel powerful. Today it sounded hollow. As she approached the door, she reached into her bag, pulled out her key, the gold-plated one with the black enamel tag engraved home. It slid in with a soft click, but didn't turn. She tried again. Harder. The lock resisted like a clenched jaw. Her breath hitched. She crouched down to inspect it, convinced she'd angled it wrong or jet lag had made her fumble. But then she saw it. Taped just above the handle, perfectly level, was a thick envelope with block print handwriting she recognized instantly. Per revised agreement, this property was purchased under LLC 8427. She stared at it for a full 10 seconds before her brain caught up. Her hand shook as she tore the envelope off the door and ripped it open. Inside was a printed copy of the revised deed, the new ownership clause highlighted. Her name was absent. The purchaser, LLC 8427 Holdings, sole member, Mark S. Taylor. She stepped back, heart hammering. Her phone was already in her hand, dialing Mark. Even though she knew, he wouldn't answer. Voicemail. Mark, she said, voice brittle, what is this? You can't just change the locks. We have an agreement. You can't just take the house. She hung up before finishing the thought, a knot forming in her throat. Across the street, Mr. Ballard, the retired dentist with the annoying wind chimes, watched her through his blinds. She turned her back and rang the doorbell. No answer. Then the garage door opened. Automatically. Silently. Like a curtain rising on the third act of a play she no longer recognized. 2 uniformed movers appeared, one carrying a box labeled Rachel, office, the other wheeling out what looked like the antique desk she inherited from her aunt. They didn't look at her, didn't speak. They were calm, professional, efficient, not hired in a hurry. They had been scheduled. She stormed in through the garage, past the boxes, past the neatly labeled crates, until she reached the kitchen. Everything was clean. Quiet. Too quiet. No TV humming in the background. No laundry running. Just the ticking of the wall clock she bought in Santa Fe, counting down something she hadn't realized was ending. On the kitchen island sat a neat stack of papers. She recognized the top sheet instantly. Asset division. Lines of itemized property, accounts, shared holdings, and beneath each one, transferred to LLC 8427. Her name appeared only in a handful of lines. Personal belongings. A jewelry box. Clothes. The car she never drove. A yellow post-it note was stuck to the bottom right corner. A sentence scrawled in familiar black ink. Mark's penmanship, sharp, clean, unshaken. You chose public humiliation. So did I. She read it once. Twice. A third time. The clock ticked again. Rachel's mouth opened, but no sound came. Her eyes scanned the kitchen like it might morph back into what it used to be if she looked at it long enough. It didn't. The fridge still had the magnet from their trip to Rome. The espresso machine still sat on the counter, blinking 12 o'clock like it had been unplugged and never reset. But the walls felt alien. The air inside heavier, like it didn't belong to her lungs anymore. The front door opened. The same 2 movers entered again, one nodding to her politely as he passed, like she was a guest in someone else's home. Because she was. She grabbed the note and crumpled it, but it didn't help. The words were already tattooed in her head. You chose public humiliation. So did I? She sank into one of the dining chairs, the one she insisted on importing from Denmark, and stared at the marble counter until her vision blurred. No one said anything. Not the movers. Not her assistant. Not even Mark. He hadn't yelled. Hadn't cursed. Hadn't posted a single thing. He'd simply removed her. Quietly. Thoroughly. Permanently. And now, surrounded by her own things being boxed and cataloged, Rachel finally understood something terrifying. The silence wasn't weakness. It was planning. The last move she had left was a crash landing. Rachel stormed through the glass doors of the firm's downtown headquarters at 9:01 a.m. Hair swept back in a tight bun, sunglasses still on, heels striking the tile with the force of a gavel. The receptionist blinked once and quickly looked away. No greeting. No offer of coffee. Just silence. She didn't ask for clearance. She didn't need it. Not in her mind. Conference room C, where the board met for emergency governance sessions, was at the end of the hall. The door was closed. That never used to happen when she was walking in. But today it was. She didn't knock. She barged in. 7 heads turned toward her in perfect unison, each expression somewhere between discomfort and tightly controlled alarm. Carl sat closest to the monitor, eyes narrowed behind his glasses. Beside him was Claire from legal, the same Claire who had been ice-cold during the compliance call. 2 other board members she barely recognized. And at the head of the table, Mark's chair. Empty, but his face was on the screen. Calm, crisp lighting, remote background, perfectly poised. The man who used to carry her laptop bag to investor meetings now held the votes that would decide if she still existed on paper. Rachel, Claire said, voice firm. This is a closed meeting. I am the meeting, Rachel snapped. Or have you all conveniently forgotten whose name built this brand? No one spoke. Mark simply blinked. Rachel marched to the end of the table and tossed down a stack of hastily printed rebuttals. Her version of the truth, misinterpretations, policy ambiguities, character references, her spotless record prior to the post. All of this, all of it, is manufactured over a caption and an uncomfortable intern. And you're just letting him gut me from 200 miles away? That's how we handle internal conflict now. She scanned the room. No one met her eyes. Claire cleared her throat. The board has already reviewed the compliance concern, the conduct report, the contract. That clause is ancient. Rachel barked. You're telling me a 21-year-old document trumps actual performance metrics? Carl finally spoke. It's not the clause, Rachel. It's the trust. And the visibility. You wrote the firm's ethical code. You set the standard. And then you trampled it in front of 14,000 followers and 24 clients who saw Brad's hand on your back while you tagged us. Rachel pivoted to the screen. Mark, tell them this is over. Tell them we can settle this. Mark's face didn't move. It is settled. You bastard. He didn't flinch. Carl leaned forward. The vote is final. The controlling stake has transferred per Clause 17, with Mark now assuming executive oversight. Henry has formally stepped down from the advisory board, citing conflict of interest. Rachel went still. What? She whispered. Carl continued. He submitted his resignation this morning. No statement. Rachel staggered a half step, nearly bumping into the chair behind her. Her knees didn't buckle, but only just. This isn't legal, she muttered. Claire turned to her, voice colder than steel. It's airtight. Rachel laughed, a sharp, ragged sound that didn't sound like her at all. I'll sue. Carl gave a small, tired shrug. Of course you will. And then, as if the moment couldn't humiliate her more, the board secretary tapped a key and pushed a printed release across the table toward her. She scanned it. In response to recent developments, Whitmore and Drake Consultancy affirms its unwavering commitment to ethical standards. We do not condone conduct that compromises our code. Effective immediately, Rachel Whitmore Grant's executive privileges are suspended pending resolution of the review process. We remain focused on integrity and trust with all stakeholders. The word integrity landed like a slap. Rachel looked around. These were faces she'd once dazzled at retreats, charmed at conferences, won over with charisma and mock humility. Now they stared at her like she was a virus they were finally managing to contain. She opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out. No apology. No retort. No threat. Only air. Mark's face on the screen didn't change. He waited, expression unreadable, letting her stand there in her tailored power suit, outnumbered, undone, utterly obsolete. She left without a word. The boardroom door clicked softly behind her, like a coffin lid sealing shut. And just like that, the empire she'd built, styled, and sculpted out of ambition and curated quotes collapsed not with a bang, but with a quiet, surgical vote. Powerless. Invisible. Gone. The call came just after dawn, before the sunlight had even reached the windows of the cramped Airbnb she now called temporary. The apartment smelled like fresh paint and stale carpet cleaner. Rachel was curled on the couch, still in yesterday's clothes, laptop open to a blank email draft she'd been rewriting for hours. Her phone buzzed violently across the coffee table. Blocked number. She answered without thinking. Rachel, a voice rasped. What the hell did you do? It took her a second to recognize him. Liam Mercer, CEO, the man who once called her the public pulse of the firm. Now he sounded like he hadn't slept in days. Liam, she said, sitting up. I just got off a call with our general counsel. He spat, voice cracking. Clause 17. The original contract. You triggered a goddamn time bomb. She blinked. Liam, aunt, do you have any idea what you've done? That document your father co-signed. Do you even remember it? The moment Mark filed that clause, it didn't just shift your stake. It nuked the firm's credibility. Clients are pulling out. Compliance wants a full audit. Our sponsors are demanding to know why the face of our ethics campaign is being erased from the website. She didn't speak. You smiled for every camera, gave every damn TED Talk on integrity, and now you're tagged in half a dozen tabloid feeds with some grinning junior exec like it's a fashion shoot. Brad wasn't. Brad's gone, Rachel. Liam shouted. He was fired before his plane landed. You told us to hold our people to a higher standard. Your words. You think Mark made this ugly? You made this nuclear. She closed her eyes. The ache in her temples had become a full-body ache now, radiating like poison in her bloodstream. Liam's voice dropped, hoarse and hollow. We're ruined. Do you get that? Not just you. Us. And I don't have a fix. I don't even have a press angle. Rachel whispered. I can talk to the media. I can clarify. No, you can't, he said. You don't speak for us anymore. You speak for the problem. He paused. And then, quieter than before, God help us. He outmaneuvered all of us. Click. Silence. She stared at the wall. Across the room, her laptop pinged. New email. Subject. Final notice. Termination and equity void. From Legal Department. Timestamp. 7:12 a.m. This communication serves as confirmation that Rachel Whitmore Grant has been officially removed as an executive and equity holder from Whitmore and Drake Consultancy. As per Clause 17 of the 2004 Founding Agreement and subsequent restructuring terms, 2013, 2019, all ownership, voting rights, and residual profit shares have been nullified. This decision is final. Do not reply to this email. Attached, a PDF stamped with the firm's crest. Her name, crossed out in red. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat. Still. Across town, Mark stood in the front yard of what used to be their house. The sky above was overcast, but the grass was green, damp from early dew. He held a garden hose in one hand, calmly spraying the hydrangeas she had planted years ago but never remembered to water herself. He didn't wear a suit. No watch. No tie. Just jeans and a faded t-shirt that read, "Silence is a strategy." It had been a gag gift from Carl once. It fit better now. He moved with the same quiet steadiness he always had, as if watering the lawn was more important than anything else in the world. As if the last week had just been some overdue maintenance. Tedious, methodical, necessary. He finished the flower beds, coiled the hose, and looked up at the sky. The silence wasn't empty. It was earned. Back in her Airbnb, Rachel finally shut the laptop. No more plans. No more hashtags. No more her.